What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode here of Dynasty Football on the Loaded Box Vids. We're jumping into part 2 of our free agency frenzy for fantasy purposes. But before we start, I'm going to introduce my good buddy, my co-host, Dylan Mazzola, as always. How you doing today, man?
Dude, I'm going to say the same thing. I think it's the 3 videos going
Well,
on.
it's good to talk about football.
I'm always happy to be able to discuss potential strategies or value for people. Now that I'm recently in the winner circle in the fantasy football world, because before I never really won. So now I feel like I have some validity behind what I'm going to tell you guys.
Well, for sure. Now, it's always good to have a win under your belt, and it's even better when you beat your co-host in the championships.
I didn't say that. You said that.
No, I know. I was thinking it. You were thinking it. I'm just going to say it out loud. But anyway, if you guys didn't watch the first episode, make sure to go back and do that. We're going over about 35 total, guys, throughout 3 videos. Yes, that means there will be a part 3 coming out next week. But for now, we're going to jump into part 2. We've got a healthy mix of quarterbacks, running backs, receivers, and, of course, tight ends for you here today. So we're going to jump in with the first one, and that's going to be the dreaded Chicago Bears, or soon-to-be ex-Chicago Bears quarterback, Mitch Trubisky. Our official predictions for him: he's got a pretty wide range of landing spots. We've got Indianapolis, Washington, Denver, and we initially did have the Rams on here, but clearly they're not going to be needing a quarterback anymore because they went out and they got Matt Stafford. So obviously won't be including them in the discussion. So we'll narrow it down to the Colts, Washington, and Denver. So Dylan, in your opinion, where is he going to have the most fantasy value, if any fantasy value?
I don't know. He's kind of a hard person to assess. And sorry, my camera keeps going black and white. I don't know. It's getting dark. But so if you're watching the video, I apologize. But no, I don't know. Because Trubisky shows games where he looks good and then games where, he's Mitch Trubisky. So, I also don't know, from a real life standpoint, what they would even gain to trade, what it would cost to acquire him. So I don't know. I guess maybe Denver, but if I'm the Broncos fans, anybody listening, I don't know if that's really that much of an improvement over Drew Lock. I mean, it is, but it isn't, because they both kind of struggle with accuracy and making some reads. So I guess I don't know. This is a tough one. I would say honestly, he probably has some value wherever he goes, but he's more along the lines of if you're in a No, before you smile, I was gonna say he's more of a second quarterback in a two quarterback league. I don't think that changes wherever he goes. That's what I was trying to get at. I know I was doing a roundabout way, but I don't think he has really that much value to start anywhere. He's a spot starter if your guy's hurt. That's about it, or a second string quarterback.
Yeah, I definitely don't foresee him being incredibly value in dynasty leagues. I mean, he could go somewhere, become the starter, and maybe turn his career around a little bit. But, I mean, obviously Chicago gave him every chance in the world over the last 3 or 4 years, and he really hasn't done too much with it. He's put together a couple good string of games here and there, but at the end of the day, he's still Mitch Trubisky, and he's going to continue to be Mitch Trubisky wherever he goes. I could definitely see Washington or Denver picking up him kind of more or less to just compete with the quarterbacks in that group. If Indianapolis doesn't address the quarterback position elsewhere, I can see them bringing Trubisky in because, I mean, it's weird to say, but he would be an upgrade from Jacoby Brissett, and with Phillip Rivers retiring, I mean, yeah. God only knows what Indianapolis is going to do at the quarterback, especially since it's not like they have good draft capital to use on a quarterback. So that's definitely an intriguing option.
That's probably the best example, because I was thinking about the Washington, and I was like, I don't know. Even Alex Smith, how old he is in his leg, I was like, is Trubisky really that much of an upgrade over him? And I was like, yeah. So it doesn't really.
Yeah, I think more or less he's just going to get brought in as kind of training camp competition, and unless he really wows people this offseason, I do think he's going to settle into a backup quarterback role, and that'll probably be his role on. Well,
could go to the Patriots.
It could go to the Patriots. I definitely don't hate that take, but at the same time, I feel like the Patriots are kind of going to build from the ground up, and I don't.
Yeah, I agree, but
Trubisky
at the same
is
point, like I
guy to do
said,
that.
if you're a Bears fan or Dynasty football owner of Mitchell Trubisky, there's the Patriots can literally go up to the Bears and or is he a free agent or a restricted free agent?
He's going to be a free agent. They didn't pick up any of his options.
Okay, so Mitch is not gonna. He's gonna be a guy that gets like a 1-year contract. He's not gonna get a long-term deal, and he's not gonna get market. He's not gonna get like Ryan Tannehill money or potential Dak Prescott money, and so Tom Brady money in Tampa. He's gonna get like a 1-year, like $10 million contract or something like that, like a prove yourself deal. So he can go anywhere, and like you're saying, he probably is gonna be brought in as almost like what the Bears did with Nick Foles. So a team's gonna bring him in just to compete. Like the Colts might bring him in to compete with Jacoby, or Washington brings him in to compete with the GOAT Alex Smith. I don't know. It's like it's just not. I would maybe, I guess, technically, would you consider him a buy low, considering his value's at the lowest of low? But I don't know if he ever redeems his career.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would consider him a buy low. I mean, you're not taking him to be a starting quarterback. You might not even be taking him to be your second quarterback if you do start 2 quarterbacks on your dynasty roster. But, I mean, with so many question marks around Trubisky right now, I can't imagine anyone's going to ask very much for him in a trade. I personally wouldn't go out and get him. I wouldn't go out of my way to get him. But there definitely is a market for him out there somewhere. So if you really want to take a shot on him, or you're in a rebuild and you can afford to stash a guy with upside, potentially like Trubisky, that could be a decent enough move. But I think we've talked about Trubisky more than long enough on this video. More than anyone should talk about Trubisky. So we're going to move on to our first running back of the day, and it's going to be Kenyan Drake of the Arizona Cardinals. Our official prediction is that he's either going to stay in Arizona, he's going to head to Buffalo, or he's going to move into Atlanta and fill the vacancy that Todd Gurley is going to leave. Personally, I don't view Kenyan Drake as a world-breaking running back. I wasn't taking him as an RB1 in 2020, and I won't even take him as a top half RB2 in 2021, no matter where he lands. He showed that even on one of the NFL's best offenses in Arizona, he still really can't get too much done. I mean, sure, he was honestly, I think he was top 10 or top 12 in terms of rushing yards on the year, believe it or not. But, I mean, how many times did you watch him get stuffed at the goal line? How many times did you watch him lose receiving work to Chase Edmonds? How many times have you just watched him perform subpar? I mean, there's not really a lot to like about Kenyan Drake. I think my favorite landing spot for him would actually be with the Atlanta Falcons, because with them not bringing Todd Gurley back, there's really not going to be a whole hell of a lot of competition. I could see Kenyan Drake moving to Atlanta and basically having the exact same role that he does in Arizona. I guess if he stays in Arizona, he'll continue the same role, but I do expect them to go out and get someone this offseason, kind of bolster that up a little bit. So maybe him staying there isn't too likely. What do you think for Kenyan Drake in 2021?
I guess I would agree with him. I mean, as you also know, we talk about him all the time. I'm not really a big fan either. So if you're a Kenyan Drake stan, you came to the wrong people to talk to you about him. But I guess, yeah, I would go with Atlanta just because of the lack of running backs on the roster, the fact that they might move on from their quarterback soon, meaning they're going to have to run the ball a lot. Buffalo would be interesting, though, just because their running backs are very inefficient, albeit they are young.
Yeah, he'll fit right in with the inefficiencies there.
Yeah, exactly. I thought that was going to be my joke. Thank you for ruining it. But so – also, Buffalo, I just feel with Josh Allen will always be a throwing team, especially with like Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis, et cetera. So I think the Falcons make the most sense for potential fit.
Yeah. So now I got to ask, would you rather buy him or sell him this offseason?
Probably sell him, but he's not really. He's not even. You're probably arguably selling very close to being, I would say, under market value, because he's kind of had a meh season, and he's a free agent. But like he's not like we're talking about. He's not like the super sexy free agent where like not every single team's going to want him. I think there's only a handful of teams that are even going to contact his agent in real life.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you desperately need a running back. If you can grab Kenyan Drake for like a 3rd-round rookie pick,
Yeah,
I
we'll do
totally
that.
would. At the same time, I feel like he's one of those weird scenarios because I would only buy him for a third round pick. But if I had him, I wouldn't sell him for a third round pick.
No, you want like a second.
I'd want at least like a late second. Maybe you could talk me into like taking the 301 or something like that.
Yeah, or you want a younger asset, the stash. You don't want just a third round pick if you're trying to sell.
Exactly. So Kenyan Drake's definitely a weird one. Depending on if you have Kenyan Drake or for some reason you want him, that's my personal advice to you. Either get a second or give a third for him. Anything
Or package them with something to do a bigger trade if you're selling.
exactly. But I think the days of him being a starting running back, a full-on starting running back, is well behind him. I mean, we saw that this year, even with Chase Edmonds giving him a run for his money. So we'll move on from Kenyan Drake. Next guy on the list is our second and final running back of the day, and it's actually going to be Marlon Mack of the Indianapolis Colts. So there are a lot of people that think that he won't even take a snap in 2021 because of the gruesome injury that he did have happen to him. But our official predictions are if he makes a comeback and he does go somewhere in 2021, we have that he's either going to replace Kenyan Drake in Arizona, he's going to go to Houston, which is a complete rebuild of a team, or he's going to go to Green Bay if they end up letting Aaron Jones or Jamal Williams walk. So hypothetically speaking, let's say Marlon Mack is good to go week 1. No remnants whatsoever of this injury, which is very unlikely, by the way. But the injury does make him even a better buy low. Houston, Green Bay, or Arizona, where do you think a majority of his fantasy value would be? Because I personally think that he's going to have a first and second down role somewhere. I don't think he's going to see the field very often on third down.
No, but I wouldn't say Green Bay because I know for a fact, I just have a feeling they're going to retain one of the two running backs that are, free agents on that team. And they already have A.J. Dillon, so he would be joining a semi-crowded backfield. Texans already – David Johnson's still there, correct?
Yeah, he's there for another year or two, I believe.
And so is what's his face? Mr. Reliable, Mr. Flex Play.
Duke Johnson.
So, yeah, Mr. Fake Flex Play, should I say. We all get fooled in that every year. Yeah. So I guess Arizona, but we also haven't really seen people. Some people are high on Benjamin, the young rookie they drafted last year. Not high on him, but they think that he might take snaps away because he didn't really play any. So I guess for those three, Arizona. I do think Marlon Mack. If I was a GM, or a person trying to get him, I'd rather own him than Kenyan Drake. If that's saying anything, that's how much I dislike Kenyan Drake. So. I don't know. I think Marlon Mack might have more of an audience because of the injury, and you may be saying why, but because he's going to be super cheap probably. Teams aren't going to spend bazooka bucks on him. You can probably get him on a 1 or 2 year deal for a couple million because of the injury scare. So if you're a team that needs a running back, like any of those teams we named, or even the Jets, you can go out and get a guy who has performed when he's healthy. That's the key thing with him. When healthy is the big asterisk next to his name.
Yeah, and that's what kind of makes me scared of Marlon Mack. I mean, I definitely do want to see him go somewhere. I do want to see him come back to football and everything. But the injury that he, went under.
Yeah, it's very terrifying.
It's a terrifying injury. Players historically have not really bounced back from that. It's a very rare case scenario where players come back and they are sprightly as ever. So I personally, I'm not going to buy Marlon Mack at all. And I know some people are thinking that he's a really, really, really sneaky buy low option because, I mean, he looked great in Indianapolis in 2019 before Jonathan Taylor got there. Marlon Mack did perfectly fine. I believe he had over 1,000 yards on the ground. But the issue is that I really just don't think he's going to come back from this injury. So
no, I agree. That's very fair.
For prediction purposes, I wouldn't mind watching him go to Arizona and replace Kenyan Drake if he's healthy. I wouldn't mind him go to Houston either because I do think that he could overtake that backfield if he comes back fully healthy. But the issue is I don't think he's going to come back fully healthy. And if you have Marlon Mack in your league and anyone offers anything for him, like a late third, even early fourth round, I'm so convinced that this injury is going to do him in that I would probably accept that.
Yeah, I could see that. I think you named 2 good spots though for him because there's other backs there that are decent, so he could get shelter minutes, so to speak, and not have to be the guy. So if he does come back, but isn't 100%, they could sprinkle him in. But yeah, that's good. I agree. I just think talent's there. So if he can prevail, I think there's value there. I'm not advocating to go get him. I just think he's a good player.
For sure. But speaking of talent, let's move on to the receivers. And we actually have one of the biggest names in all of free agency, not just of the receivers. And it's going to be Kenny Golladay coming from the Detroit Lions.
Speaking of injuries.
Yeah. Now, I will say it's basically already been released that Detroit is not going to re-sign Kenny Golladay or Marvin Jones, nor do I think they would want to re-sign there.
Shocker. After they just trade their franchise quarterback away, they're not going to re-sign receivers.
Yeah, I feel bad for Jared Goff because he's coming into TJ Hawkinson, DeAndre Swift, and literally no one else.
No, I feel bad for TJ Hawkinson if it was anybody. He had to watch his borderline sub-elite quarterback, however you feel about Stafford, leave. He had to watch his other 2 options, and then now he's got Jared Goff, as you call him sometimes. And we all know that Sean McVay is literally the puppet master with Jared. So I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But Kenny Golladay is our official predictions for him is that he's going to end up in Baltimore, in Cleveland, or with the New York Giants. All 3 of these teams are definitely in need of that big physical bruising type of receiver, the big red zone target that Kenny Golladay is. Personally, as long as he can stay healthy, and I'm guessing he's going to come back at 100% for the start of 2021 since he ended up sitting out most of 2020. Between Baltimore, Cleveland, and the New York Giants, where would you love to see him the most for his dynasty value?
Baltimore. You said Giants, and immediately for a second, I was like, well, and I was like, Daniel Jones is their quarterback. And I was like, next. And then I was like, Baltimore. I was like, whether you want to say he's a running back or a quarterback, Lamar Jackson does have incredible fantasy value, upside. And he can throw the ball when he has time. And part of the problem is why he looks so bad this year is because they don't have weapons for him. They don't. As a whole, obviously they still have Marquise Brown and.
Well, that's the thing with them. I mean, with the exception of Mark Andrews, they just have a bunch of speedsters on that offense.
Yes, exactly. And they just have guys who can run fast.
Well, exactly, and that doesn't work because Lamar Jackson isn't the kind of guy that can accurately throw a bomb down the field.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at his red zone targets, he looks at his tight ends more often than not because all of his receivers are too damn small to catch anything. I mean, sure, they brought in Des Bryant, and he actually was a pretty decent red zone target.
Yeah, he actually played pretty well.
Yeah, but I mean, Kenny Golladay would be an obvious upgrade from Des Bryant at this point in their careers.
And there's no competition for him, really.
Exactly. Kenny Golladay would step in and be the immediate wide receiver 1 on this offense. It would open the doors up for Marquise Brown, in my opinion. It would definitely hinder Mark Andrews' fantasy upside because Kenny Golladay would steal more of Andrews' touchdowns.
He'll be probably a top 5 tight end, though. I mean, it's not like he's going to digress. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I completely agree. And this would also help out Lamar Jackson a ton. So I'm definitely in full agreement with you that Baltimore would be my favorite place for Kenny Golladay to land. I think that he would pump at least the similar numbers to what he had in Detroit, if not even better. Potentially have even more touchdowns and touchdown upside in general. I would not hate it if he ended up in Cleveland or with the New York Giants either. I think he's still a top 20 to top 24 wide receiver in Dynasty. Because, I mean, think about it. Neither of those 2 teams really have a big red zone target right now.
No, I agree. The Giants, even though their quarterback play is terrible, I mean, it's kind of the same thing. Like they have Mr. Brick Hands for tight end Evan Ingram, which I think he's a free agent, right? Or soon. And anyway, they have Darius Slayton, also a speedster. So, yeah, the Browns I wouldn't mind, but that's going in if they get rid of Odell just because I don't know if they've confirmed that yet. I know there's rumors they want to.
It hasn't been confirmed, but I think they're going to get rid of him.
Just because the personalities, I don't care. I just don't think it would mesh having Jarvis Landry, Odell, and Golladay. Not personality-wise, just like talent-wise. Like I know they all are competitive athletes and they all want to be number 1 and 2, respectively. And I don't know how they would manage that time. You know what I mean? Like the mortgage board. So I think Baltimore's the clear cut.
Yeah. So let me ask you this before we move on from Kenny Golladay. This time last year, Kenny Golladay was widely considered a top 15 dynasty receiver. Would you trade a back-end first-round rookie pick for Kenny Golladay, knowing that you don't know where he's going to end up?
I think depending upon my team, I would if I right now on both my dynasty teams. It's ironic because I have a back end first, and I have Kenny Golladay in my other dynasty league. So yeah, I think I would. I almost sold him last year, even though he was hurt. I had someone reach out to me and ask me what I wanted for him, and the value is a little too low. Well, very low. They underballed me. I'm not going to put them on blast, but so. Yeah, I think I would. I mean, I think talent triumphs over landing spot. We've learned that the hard way, you and I, with certain rookies where we've gone, they went there, and then we watch them explode, and then we're like, we are literal dumbasses.
Yeah.
So it's not like Kenny Golladay is a little older, but it's not like he's 29 or 30. He's 27, I believe?
Yeah, I think so.
So he still has a couple good years left of the elite, in terms of fantasy or in real life, he's not bad of the true production. So I think you trade a background first. If he can stay healthy, you're getting a top 15 option for receiver for the next 2-3 seasons at least. Which, if I told you, hey, part with the 10th overall for a top 10 receiver for 2-3 seasons, you're probably going to say yes.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I definitely would part ways with a low-end first-round pick. I don't think I would dish out a top 6, top 7 first-round pick for Kenny Golladay, but
no.
Anything 8th overall or less, I could probably part ways for Kenny Golladay because, 27 years old, that's pretty much the prime age for receivers. And if he can come into 2021 perfectly healthy, I think he's going to offer a ton of return on value. But we'll move on to the next receiver. And it's actually a guy that I know you really like or maybe you hate him. I don't know, because you tried to sell him to me about 1 trillion times this year in Dynasty. And that's going to be Corey Davis, wide receiver of the Tennessee Titans. Official predictions are that he re-signs with the Titans. He ends up with the New York Jets, or he heads out to Las Vegas. Corey Davis, what's his value right now as a free agent?
Well, I think he's a classic case of, I would say sell high, but he also is a free agent, so people have skepticism there, rightfully so. He definitely does have more value than he did come last year or 2 years ago. He hasn't had this much value since he got drafted in the first round in real life. It is funny, though. I did try to trade Mikey Corey Davis probably 8 times, which, to be honest, I saw something there. I was trying to help you out.
Yeah.
But no, so I think Corey Davis would benefit most going to the Jets, especially depending upon quarterback play, because there really isn't many options there. And Corey Davis, if you look him up stat wise, it's kind of common sense, but is a receiver that does well when he's targeted. And the problem being in Tennessee is he wasn't always targeted. That's for a large, of reasons, being quarterback play was meh, going from Mariota to Tannehill. And then They also have a literal freight train of Derrick Henry and so forth. So I think Jets will get a lot of volume. There's not much who's going to take targets away from him. Second-year player who's played 4 games, Denzel Mims or Crowder or Perriman's gone. So Crowder, no tight end play there.
Yeah. I think in terms of dynasty production, I would prefer him to go to the Jets because I think he would step in and be the immediate wide receiver 1 to own in New York. Clearly, Corey Davis, he can play football. It took him 1 trillion years to break out, but he looked really good this year. And you're right. When he was targeted, he did play really well. Now, a part of me does wonder if it has something to do with the fact that A.J. Brown was on the other side of the field. Corey Davis did just fine in the games where A.J. Brown didn't.
I was going to say that. He did perform when he was hurt as well, though.
But you have to wonder if he could keep that up without an elite receiver on the other side of the field of him for an entire 16-game season. So that's definitely something to monitor. If he stays in Tennessee, I would say his value is largely the same as to what it was in the middle of 2020, where a lot of people still weren't really taking him too serious, but he was a great option at the wide receiver 3 or flex position. So staying in Tennessee wouldn't be bad. And then, of course, Las Vegas, I mean, God only knows what's going on over there. It's pretty apparent that Nelson Agholor will not be returning after his locker room outbursts.
Yes.
So it is interesting. Maybe Corey Davis could go there. I do think he would open up the field for Henry Ruggs a bit, which would be interesting. So let me ask you this. Somebody offered you Corey, you need a receiver, right? Somebody offers you Corey Davis for the 5th overall pick of the 2nd round. Are you taking that deal?
Probably not. That's because I'm really stingy with draft picks. But if you're really, really, really needy and Corey Davis signed with the Jets in that scenario, then maybe I would do it. But me personally, I probably wouldn't do it because I don't like trading draft picks unless I know it's something I want. But I mean, I could see why. You could also argue, are you really going to get a player that's going to be good at that point in the draft? There's no guarantee. At least Davis is somewhat proven a commodity at this point.
Yeah, for sure. So it's definitely confusing as to what to do with him. I personally would buy him, not for the 205. As we were talking with Kenny Golladay, how I said I would do the 108 or lower. With Corey Davis, I'd probably do the 208 or lower because I definitely think there is value to be had. He could go somewhere and be the wide receiver 1, or he could stay in Tennessee and be a half decent wide receiver 2 for them and low end wide receiver 3 on your team. And honestly, for a back end 2nd round pick, there really wouldn't be too difficult to part with, in my opinion. But I definitely agree with you. A mid 2nd round pick, the 206, might be a little too steep for Corey Davis with all the question marks surrounding him. But we'll move on from him into our next receiver, and it's going to be T.Y. Hilton, now free agent who is playing for the Indianapolis Colts. We're predicting that he will not be re-signing with Indianapolis and that he's going to take his talents either to Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, or the Chicago Bears. The reasoning for these 3 landing spots is that T.Y. Hilton still has a decent amount left in the tank. He looked really good in the games where he showed up and showed out in 2020. With T.Y. Hilton, though, I don't think a team is going to really be bringing him in for his skills. I think they're going to be bringing him in because he's a proven veteran. And if you'll notice, Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, and Chicago, these are all extremely young receiver rooms. They really could use a lot of structure. And T.Y. Hilton, I do think, could bring that to the locker room and still show up as a leader with his play on the field. So T.Y. Hilton, we're obviously long past the days of him being a wide receiver 1. We might be past the days of him being a wide receiver 2. I do think that he could return wide receiver 3 value, but Las Vegas, Pittsburgh, or Chicago, where would be your favorite landing spot for him?
Well, not Chicago. It's a trap there. Ask Allen Robinson. Also, Chicago's receiving core after he leaves is going to be terrible. It's Anthony Miller and Mooney's decent, but that's it. So I guess Steelers would make more sense. Maybe T.Y. Hilton could tell Chase Claypool to stop TikTok dancing. Also, they have James Washington and stuff, and Steelers historically have done incredible at drafting the wide receiver position. So I think they'd be able to also, like what you were saying, get more value out of him via mentor and on the field. He might also want to go there because he just played with an older, Hall of Fame talent. And if Big Ben doesn't retire, then, he'd be playing with Big Ben. So I think Steelers makes the most sense. Especially because Juju might leave as well. So they actually would need a receiver spot. I think there. I don't like Vegas. I think John Gruden's awesome, but he's also a cancer at the same time. He's just it's a circus act essentially. And they don't really have, outside of Darren Waller and Ruggs, if he develops, who else is on the team? I mean, Hunter Renfrow, they have some good young receivers, but the problem is they're all young. So I don't know if he wants to go play for John Gruden and Derek Carr, or if he wants to play for Mike Tomlin and Big Ben.
Yeah, for sure. And Pittsburgh still is well in a window of playoff contention. And I think that is going to be one of the things that comes down to T.Y. Hilton's decision. So I completely agree. I think Pittsburgh is probably going to be the leader. In terms of fantasy production, Pittsburgh would probably be my least favorite place, just
Yeah, it's
because
crowded.
of the amount of mouths to feed. But at the same time, I do think it's the most likely place. So if for some reason someone is trying to buy T.Y. Hilton from you in your league, I think it's time you pull the trigger. Even if it's an early third-round pick, if you're lucky enough to get that, I think it's time to part ways with T.Y. Hilton. I think he's starting to transition more into the veteran coach role.
That's what I'm doing. I'm doing the same exact thing. I have T.Y. Hilton and one of my, not our Dynasty League, the other one, and I'm literally looking to trade for him trade him away as soon as I can.
Well, and you know what the cool thing is with T.Y. Hilton? If you want T.Y. Hilton for whatever reason, trade for him now. If you want to sell T.Y. Hilton, wait for him to sign somewhere. Now, granted, if he does sign in Pittsburgh, you might lose a little bit of value on him. But realistically, what's the difference between him competing with Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson as opposed to Paris Campbell and Michael Pittman over in Indianapolis? It's pretty much the exact same scenario. So if you're going to sell him, his value can only go up from where it currently is. And if he goes to a place like Las Vegas or Chicago or somewhere where he could step in and kind of become a team's wide receiver one for some reason, his value is going to go up. So if you're going to sell T.Y. Hilton, I personally would hold him. But we did talk about the Raiders. You brought up that you can't stand them. You can't stand Gruden. And neither can Nelson Agholor, who's going to be the next wide receiver that we
Good segue.
Thank you. I pride myself on that one. But our predictions are going to be that he's either going to end up in Chicago, end up with Detroit, or he could go to the New York Jets just because it seems like a very New York Jets move to make. I will say my favorite landing spot for him in this list would probably be Detroit. And the reason being is that Jared Goff is going to need one receiver to throw to. And if Nelson Agholor steps in on this offense, I hate to break it to you, Detroit Lions fans, but Nelson Agholor would be your wide receiver one immediately. I'm sure there's Quintez Cephas in there somewhere, but I mean, he's not going to break out immediately.
Yeah, no, he's not
I mean,
going to break out.
He was last year, but Nelson Agholor could step in and be the wide receiver one in Detroit. Now, with Agholor being a free agent, with us basically knowing that he's not going to return to Las Vegas, how do you even value him? Because this past season kind of seems like a total outlier. You know, when he used to be
Sir,
Eagles,
look at that. I have no idea how to value him.
Well,
I have not a clue.
Well, that's the thing. When he was with your Eagles, I mean, the dude dropped everything that came his way.
Well, he was good. He showed promise, like his rookie year-ish. And he had the good year, like with Super Bowl. Like that's the year he was fantasy relevant. Like before, you know, he had like 8 touchdowns, like 800 yards or whatever it was, somewhere around those numbers. And he was terrible. You're right. Like drop city. And he left. And it's not like he was the focal point of the Raiders. Like if you watch their games, he was just a deep threat and really, really caught, which is ironic, really almost caught every ball thrown to him this year. And he made do of what he got. Like he, you know, some games only got targeted 3 times, but he went, you know, he would go like 3 for 80 and a touchdown, which is funny because in the year 4, you throw him the ball 12 times and he would catch 2 of them. So I don't know. Like I never hated the guy. Like he was a first round pick, you know, like I wanted the world for him and from him. I don't think he's bad. I think he proved kind of like Corey Davis to an extent. Like it's kind of like those maybe like late bloomers, or maybe the Eagles just don't know how to do receivers. But from dynasty points, I don't know if I would. I mean, I guess I would hold him unless someone really wants him from you. Like if they really want Nelson Agholor, because I don't think you're not gonna get a first. Obviously, you're not gonna get a second. You might get a third-ish, like middle tier third from someone who's desperate. But at that point, once again, the topic's on the like. If you get Agholor, if you trade him for like 308. Is that 308 going to even make your roster 2 years from now?
Yeah, I completely agree when you say he's a hold. If for some reason you really want Agholor, I mean, by all means, go ahead and do your thing. But if you're watching this and you have Nelson Agholor on your team, I would hold him because you're not going to get the value that you'd want to get from him to make anything even worth your time. I would just stash him and see where he ends up. And you know what? If he can rejuvenate to where he was in his early stages with the Eagles, then by all means, you now have a pretty half decent receiver on your team. Worst case scenario, he just wastes away on your bench, and
cut him eventually.
God forbid you passed up on pick 308 from someone, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I completely agree with you when you say that he's a hold. So we'll move on from Nelson Agholor. We have one more receiver on the list today. It's going to be Green Bay Packers, Allen Lazard. Official predictions for him would be to re-sign with Green Bay, head to New England, or go to Detroit. Obviously, we were saying that Detroit really needs receivers. New England really needs receivers now, but they also need a quarterback. In my opinion, Allen Lazard is going to get more money if he leaves Green Bay, but given the market that will likely be after a guy like Allen Lazard, I can see him taking a pay cut and staying with Aaron Rodgers personally.
I 100% agree. I don't think we have to talk about him too much. I think he's a good name. If you have him, hold him. I wouldn't say buy low. I don't know where he is at the spectrum because he missed a lot of time, but he kind of came back and started playing well. But to go on the other two landing spots real quick, he's not going to go to Detroit. It's like a wasteland. It's like an atomic bomb went off there. No offense, Lions fans. Like, I'm sorry, it sucks, but like you lost Stafford, Jones, and Kenny Golladay all in the same offseason amongst coaching changes. And then New England, you don't even know who your quarterback is yet.
I know. It's going to be weird with Allen Lazard. I feel like he is
Marvin Jones, mark my words, is a guy that will sign with New England if they have a quarterback. He's the type of receiver that I could see the Patriots signing because Marvin Jones will definitely have a market, but he's also older, so that's the kind of
don't get too carried away with Marvin Jones because spoiler alert, he will be in episode or part 3.
I'm not. I was just saying that's the kind of receiver that I think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, with Allen Lazard, I think he's going to stay in Green Bay. Now it's kind of hard because it's not like Green Bay has all the money in the world, but I also don't think Allen Lazard is worth a ton of money. I can see them kind of renewing his contract for only 1 or 2 years and just kind of taking it from there. And I think he'd be more than happy to take a bridge contract, especially since he kind of wasted away for most of 2020 with his weird chest injury. Or maybe it was abdominal injury. I don't remember to be
something along those lines.
But moving on from Allen Lazard. So that was all of our receivers. We have 3 tight ends here for you guys. And the number one guy that I want to talk about for tight ends is going to be Jonnu Smith of the Tennessee Titans. I really like Jonnu both as a real life player and a fantasy player. And I sincerely hope that one of my predictions is correct because I'm predicting that he's either going to re-sign in Tennessee, lame. He's going to head to Cincinnati, lame. Or he's going to make the star-studded, amazing decision to end up with the Carolina Panthers, which would just make me smile so hard. So I'll talk about Jonnu in a little bit, but if you had to pick Tennessee, Carolina, or Cincinnati, where would you like to see him for his fantasy value?
I'm going to rip the Band-Aid off right now for you. He's probably going to stay in Tennessee. I don't know if he'll – like Tennessee's got a good thing going, good thing brewing. He's tasted success recently. They've come close to even making it all the way. So I think he's just going to keep his feet in the sand.
Yeah, I don't know if they've started contract talks, which is kind of a concern when you take into account a guy like Jonnu Smith, someone that they
it's definitely nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I mean, so they could definitely go out. But it makes you wonder if they would offer him another contract just because, when Jonnu Smith got hurt and Anthony Ferkser stepped in, I mean, he basically replicated what Jonnu Smith could do at the tight end position, and arguably block better than Jonnu Smith, which is obviously very important on a run-first offense with Derrick Henry. But, I mean, you don't want to take away all of Ryan Tannehill's weapons. They just gave him a contract. He doesn't really have a reliable pass-catching running back to throw to. I mean, we talked about Corey Davis potentially leaving Tennessee. If Corey Davis leaves Tennessee, they would be absolutely bananas not to retain Jonnu Smith because you can't leave Ryan Tannehill with A.J. Brown and that's it. I don't think that would –
That's what happened to Miami. They didn't give him enough weapons in the offensive line play, and he looked bad, and it wasn't his fault. So I wouldn't say it would be that bad again, but, yeah, I agree. It would be somewhat similar to Miami days.
Exactly. So I think that if Corey Davis stays, I think Jonnu Smith is gone. If Corey Davis goes, I think Jonnu Smith stays.
That's a fair take.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think there is a more than 50% chance that he does stay in Tennessee. But I do really like Carolina as one of the front runners to grab him. And this is my bias aside. I mean, Carolina desperately needs a tight end. Ian Thomas is not it. You saw what Carolina did with Greg Olsen a few years ago, and for however long his career was. He was absolutely amazing. Every team needs a really good tight end. I mean, the Chiefs have Travis Kelce. Tom Brady has Gronk. Lamar Jackson has Mark Andrews. You know, a lot of the upper tier teams in the league. Well, I can't put the Raiders in this list because they're not an upper tier team.
No, I know. I was just naming good tight ends.
Don't mess with my narrative, damn it. But no, I mean, you do need a good, solid tight end out there. And I think Carolina has bigger fish to fry. I think they desperately need to address the whole Teddy Bridgewater thing, and they do need to make a splash and get themselves a quarterback. But I do think Jonnu Smith could severely help the situation there because it sucks. And I do think they're going to lose Curtis Samuel this year. I think he's going to go somewhere. Someone else is going to pay him more money than Carolina's going to offer. And
you're saying losing him, like they can allot that money towards bringing in.
Well, exactly. And I just think I don't think it would be very smart of them to lose Curtis Samuel and then not go out and get a tight end because they're going to need a guy to take up the middle of the field or use in short down situations. And I mean, sure, they're going to have Christian McCaffrey back, but the whole game can't go through Christian McCaffrey. That's good for fantasy, but it's not good for getting into the win column.
I agree.
So I got to ask you this, Jonnu Smith, can you at this moment in time, not knowing where he's going to end up, can you put him just inside of the top 10 dynasty tight ends?
I could probably. I've kind of like I was relatively high on him not as high as you were, but I had him in my top 12 before. So I guess I could put him there just because looking forward, like playing the long game, like as great as Travis Kelce is, he is like 31 or 2. So I don't know how many more years he's going to play football. Just that's a fact. George Kittle now had a really bad injury, so I don't know if that will hopefully not be a trend. You know what I'm saying? So just going based upon like that kind of stuff, yeah, I could probably put him at like 10, or if not 10, like 11 or 12. Like I just said, he's definitely up there. He's someone that I would want to acquire, and if you're listening, I would go out and get him if you can for the right price.
Yeah, I agree. I would treat Jonnu Smith as a bottom 3 tight end 1 as well. If he stays in Tennessee, we already know his value. Honestly, I think his value would be the best in Carolina. And one thing that we kind of shied away from is we didn't really talk about Cincinnati. And I don't want to talk about Jonnu Smith for too much longer, but just to get into that, Joe Burrow, he likes his tight ends. You know, CJ Uzoma produced well with him. Drew Sample produced well with him. You know, when he was in LSU, he made what's his face?
Thaddeus Moss.
Yeah, he made Thaddeus Moss look like he made him into a household name over there in LSU. Joe Burrow likes to use the tight end, and I do think Jonnu Smith could return a ton of value if he ends up in Cincinnati. Now, the good news is that I think no matter where he goes, he can only go up from where he is, and that's going to be around the number 11 or number 12 tight end in Dynasty. So I definitely would trade for him. If you're desperate for a tight end, I think I would be more than comfortable with shipping over a midway second-round pick for him straight up in a trade.
Yeah, I mean, I like him almost as much as you do, so he's a guy I would advocate going out and getting as long as the prices don't get too rich for your blood.
For sure. So we'll move on. We got 2 more guys on this list, and the next guy up is Robert Tonyan of the Green Bay Packers. Official prediction, he's staying in Green Bay. I don't think he's going to make a ton of money elsewhere. I mean, he had double-digit touchdowns this year. He played great, but he's going to want to stay in Green Bay. Green Bay is going to want him to stay there as well. You and I are both in the same boat. We think Aaron Jones is well on his way out, so they're going to have a decent amount of money to play with. I mean, granted, Green Bay is still going to be in the bottom 10 in terms of salary cap for this upcoming year, but a guy like Robert Tonyan, who has only showed 1 good year in his career so far, very most, they're going to give him a 1 to 2 year bridge contract, and maybe in a couple years he'll get paid more and actually have a market in free agency. But I think in large, especially if they want Aaron Rodgers to return, I think they're going to go out and they're going to retain Big Bob.
I think the last thing you said, they want Aaron Rodgers to return. If they don't re-sign, there's already the narrative that Aaron Rodgers wants to leave again, right? So if you don't re-sign Aaron Jones, it's whatever. Aaron will probably be pissed. If you don't also re-sign Jamal Williams and Robert Tonyan, well, that narrative that your franchise Chiefs head quarterback wants to leave might come a little more true than you think if you keep telling him, yeah, Aaron, we love you, but all the weapons. Oh, and Lazard, those four guys, they're all free agents now, but we're gonna draft another quarterback for you. No shit. Obviously, Aaron would be like, yeah, screw you guys. I'm gonna go somewhere else. I'm gonna go play for a team like the Niners that actually has receivers and a tight end. So I think it's just smart principle. And I think they'll keep him no matter what. I think even if it comes to them doing like a 1 year overpay deal, which there's no such thing as a bad 1 year deal in sports because it's a 1 year deal. I think they'll pay him more than maybe he's worth if he wants money to stay 1 year just to keep their franchise quarterback happy, because that's what you do.
Yeah. So now with Robert Tonyan, a lot of people are scattered on his dynasty ranking. I think I personally would put him ahead of Jonnu Smith in my rankings and make him probably somewhere around the tight end 8, maybe tight end 9. And the only reason why I don't have him a spot or two higher is because of the uncertainty that he'll re-sign with Green Bay. Would you say that's a fair assessment, or do you not have him as a tight end 1?
It's hard because largely he was a touchdown magnet. I'm not knocking him for that, but you know what I mean? He was the end zone guy. He was legit. He's not the kind.
And he benefited from Aaron Rodgers having an MVP caliber season, which does not happen.
He benefited from Aaron Rodgers only having who was the receivers? Lazard was hurt for God knows how long. Who else is the next best receiver?
Had a couple of games where he was out. I mean, yeah, you're right. I mean,
Aaron Jones isn't really a pass, an extreme pass catching back. He can catch patches, but he's not. You know what I mean? That's what Jamal Williams. So there really wasn't much to Definitely, he was the lead guy for the end zone. Which, if they keep him, that might be the same because there's not much to replace him. But the laws of average dictate that might go down a little bit. Yeah,
I guess we'll see what happens with him, but I would consider him as a tight end 1 in Dynasty.
Oh yeah,
I wouldn't pay more than Jonnu Smith to get him though, if that makes sense. I think he's a little better than Jonnu Smith, but as I was mentioning, I would trade the 206 for Jonnu. That's probably about what I would trade for Robert Tonyan too. Because again, I mean, we're working off such a small sample size, and we're going on with the assumption that he's going to stay in Green Bay. So I would value him almost the exact same as I would value Jonnu.
Trying to see his age real quick to get. Yeah, he's only 26. He's born in April, so he's going to turn 27 soon. So he's not terribly old either from a dynasty perspective. It's kind of hard to place him because he's one of those guys. He's a late bloomer. He came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Speaking of late bloomers, we'll move on to the last tight end on this list. And you brought him up in part 1, and that's Dan Arnold of the Arizona Cardinals. Now,
next,
it's not like we're bringing him up because this is world-breaking news that he's going to be a free agent. But he did look pretty good with Kyler Murray throwing in the ball this year. Dan Arnold did have a handful of games where he produced really well. I mean, to date in his career, he's only got 51 receptions for 715 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. But as a tight end, he is averaging 14 yards per reception over those 51 receptions. Sorry about that. The predictions are that more than likely, he's going to stay in Arizona. There's a possibility he goes to Houston. God only knows what's going to happen with him there. But, I mean, I can see him kind of going to Houston and becoming their tight end 1 just because, I mean, Houston still needs to field a team this year. They're not going to be good, but they still need to field a team. And to be completely honest with you, if Dan Arnold goes to Houston, I mean, he is going to put himself in the top 15 tight end.
You trying to say he could be
Conversation.
this year's Logan Thomas, possibly?
I think he could. I think he's a very good buy low candidate because if he stays, I mean, no, you do not even have to spend. I don't even think you'd have to spend a 3rd round pick on him. And if
He
you
might
do,
not be owned in some leagues, to be honest.
yeah, exactly. I mean, and if somebody has him and you,
I don't think he's owned in ours.
no, I don't think he's owned in our league either. But he's a guy that you can go out, you can get him for like an early 4th round pick or like the very last 3rd round pick right now. And if your bench is deep, he would be kind of an entertaining guy to stash because if he stays in Arizona, maybe he goes out and has another good string of 3 or 4 games next year, and maybe you can use him in a pinch. If he goes to Houston or if he goes to a place that just desperately needs options to throw to, that's always going to be playing from behind, he could emerge as a surprise tight end. So I don't know.
Fair.
We'll look back at this. Let's see. Season starts in 7 months from this very day. We'll look back at this in about 7.5, 8 months and see what happens. And you know what? If Dan Arnold is suddenly fantasy relevant, we'll look back at this and we'll be like, hell yeah, we called that.
Yeah, you're definitely higher on him than I am. I fell into the trap this past season. I drafted him in one of my deeper redraft leagues, like a really, really, really deep bench. And I also drafted him in one of my startup dynasties and didn't deliver as much as I would like to have with the quarterback like Kyler Murray. But I mean, yeah, definitely get him if you can. I think he's going to stay in Cardinals land. And I'm not sure his market is that big in real life.
Yeah, no, I agree. If he goes anywhere else, even if he stays in Arizona, it's not like I think he's going to get some world
If he
break.
goes anywhere else, it's because a team that really needs the tight end, like the Patriots or the Texans, like someone who really needs that position. If not, he's staying in Arizona.
Exactly. So we'll see what happens with Dan Arnold, and we'll also see what happens with the rest of these guys. That's going to be it for us here today on part 2 of our free agency, fantasy frenzy, whatever you want to call it. A lot of interesting names on there today. I mean, obviously we touch base on some kind of irrelevant guys at this point, like Marlon Mack or Dan Arnold. But it's all in good fun. It's always just to bring as much information as we possibly can. We got part 3 coming out next week. That's going to be another 10 or 11 players to go over. And then after that, this video series will be done and we'll move on to the next topic. But thanks for tuning in, guys. Make sure you're following Dylan on Twitter, myself on Twitter, and Loaded Box on Twitter. And feel free to go over to the website, loadedboxpodcast.com, to check out our articles, check out the guys' podcasts. And we have our rookie rankings, our regular rankings. We have player profiles coming out. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on the website right now. With that being said, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. And thanks for tuning in, guys. We will see you guys next week.